This is Mixed Bag Storytelling. This is Mixed Bag Story Swap at Belmont Village on Zoom on October 17, 2022. And here we have Vicki Ness.
Hello, I'm not spotlighted, but I can't tell if there we go. Okay. It was after a storm, and a spider web shone with a new light of morning, every little drop of water like a rhinestone in lace. It was beautiful, and it shimmered in the slight breeze, delicate as a baby's sigh. And there in the bushes, peering out with one eye, peering closer, was Edna, hiding in the bushes, looking out from the leaves to see this miracle of light and beauty. Oh, it was just stunning. Oh, she was thrilled. And then later that morning, she went to her other location she wanted to see, which was the skeletal remains of an old barn that was about ready to collapse. And the mid-morning sun would come in, and she winged her way around into the middle of it until she was standing among blocks of light thick with dust. And she stood in one of those light blocks and felt the warmth and heard a faint rustling and fluffling of wings far up in the loft, and smelled the old hay and listened to the silence. It was a miracle, just a miracle. But she had another errand she had to do, and that was to go to the park, one of the lesser known trails that went by a pond. And in a particular time, at a particular place, the sun would shine on the water, illuminating a drowsy haze of tiny flies that flew perpetually over the still water and lily pods. And there, in the darkness of the glade, a single white stripe. It was a heron, silent and still, magnificent. Oh, she gathered these wonderful miracles together like somebody with a butterfly net would after butterflies. Oh, every one more beautiful than the other. And she had this theory, you see, that there were miracles everywhere. And if people didn't watch them and see them, then they didn't exist. Sort of like the tree that falls down in the woods. If nobody's there to hear it, was there a sound? Well, it's the same thing. If there are miracles happening and nobody sees them, well, they're just lost. It's like pouring champagne down a drain, or throwing good food into the trash. It's wrong. And so she tried to gather up as many miracles as she possibly could. But it occurred to her that she couldn't possibly gather them all up. So she set about encouraging the villagers to help her gather these miracles in. So she sat herself outside the McCullough's house. Marge McCullough was in the kitchen, pounding on the pots and pans and yelling at the kids. But outside, the sunset was turning the sky copper and salmon. And so Edna got little tiny pebbles, and she threw them against the kitchen window, one after the other, and they ping, ping, until finally Marge said, "What? What is that noise?" And she looked out the window, and there was this sunset, turning the sky to burnished copper, turning her kitchen into an orange glow. And there was a flock of black birds swarming and swooping and diving until they finally found their home in a tree. It was beautiful. "John, you've got to come see this. Look how beautiful." And he leaned out, and the two of them watched how beautiful the sunset. And Edna felt pretty good about that. The next day, Mr. Schumer, who grumbled with every walk, every step, every movement he made, was heading out to his mailbox. A bunch of crap. That's what's out there. It's a bunch of crap. All I get in that mailbox, bunch of crap. I don't know why I empty it. I don't need any more crap in my life. Well, by the time he got to the mailbox and opened it up, he was in a foul mood. But what was in the mailbox actually were red rose petals that by afternoon the mailbox had heated up and the fragrance hit him full on of roses, and he stopped for just a moment and realized it was summer. And he could hear somebody mowing a lawn after work over there, and there were kids screaming and running in the streets, and he could smell fresh mowed grass, and he remembered, it's summer. And then there was Todd McKinney, who was a workaholic, and he bustled out his door early in the morning in a heavy fog. But there was something shimmering up there. What was that? Oh, wasn't anything, but look at the birds. What are they all cackling and singing about? And it occurred to him he'd never heard so many birds. And he looked around him, and he was in a pocket of bird sound, buffeted by fog and silence and stillness. It was like a miracle. Well, this went on, this revolutionary watching for miracles. And everybody in the town kind of knew it was Edna, because Edna's she's a can or two short of a full six pack. She's mental. Yeah, the poor old dear, she's daffy as the day is long. But she's got a good heart. Oh, she's such a sweet woman. And if we're going to have a daffy, loony person in town, better that than some nut kid with an assault weapon. So they really kind of looked out for Edna. And better yet, they started doing their own miracle watch. And so maybe this sullen high school kid waiting for the bus would suddenly recognize, oh, that's the apple pressing outside of town in the orchards. Oh, and I can smell leaves and a little bit of wood smoke. Oh, it must be fall. Oh, isn't that cool? And snuggle into their sweaters a little more. Or maybe they would be gardening and they're in a rush because they got to get to dinner. They've got to get dinner on the table once again, and yet they've got to get these damn weeds out. And what's that? What's a spider web? Why, look at that spider. Oh, isn't he beautiful? And look at that web he's weaving. Oh, it's gorgeous. And so people started making their own miracles and finding them wherever they were. A shaft of light that warmed their shoulders. Rain coming down a window in rivulets. There were miracles kind of everywhere, and it grew and it grew day after day until the day came when Edna passed on. And a lot of the villagers came to her funeral, and there she was in a pine box. Dirt coming on top, dirt coming on top, and everybody looking down at that pine box. Not a relative of hers to be seen, just the village, saying to themselves, that poor old dear. She didn't have another person to her name, didn't have a penny in her pocket. That poor old dear never went anywhere, never did anything. And so the priest did his liturgy, which is his way of forming a ladder so that the soul of the departed could finally climb out of this filth and wretched mess that is living. And he had the authority of the priest to recommend her to heaven, you see. But what he and everybody else in the village failed to notice is that Edna had been living in heaven all along. The end. Happily ever after.
Thank you, Vicky. Well, you have, for me, done it again. As if you have seen people I have seen and used eyes of your own to come away with things that sound like what I have seen
Mm.
or felt or heard or experienced. And you've made it your own, and you've made it seem like mine. I can't speak for other people, but that's what your story tonight did, and it's common for me to experience that after you tell.
Oh,
So
thank
thanks for
you.
paying attention.
Thank you. Thank you. I do. I am aware of who I am, and I am all those people too. The one who grumbles out to the mailbox and thinks of more crap.
I love that part.
I'm with Diamond. But what's good about you being you and you being the person in the story is that you have done what Shakespeare said we all are doing. It, the world is your stage,
Oh,
and you have parted the curtains for the rest of us, and you've added actors. You haven't used yourself even. You say
oh,
you do, but the
yeah.
way it comes across for me is that it's a stage, and I am seeing something that has become what we call art, and I'm right there.
Thank you. You know, it's interesting. I never tell stories about gay women. I am a lesbian and I'm married to a lesbian, but I can't do that because then it would be about me. And I don't want to tell a story about me. But of course, every story anybody tells is about themselves, those characters within them.
Well, isn't that an interesting filter, an interesting veil, an interesting transition
Mm.
from at the Berkeley Rep where I used to usher pre-pandemic, we would watch the actors who used to rotate, kind of like the British with repertory,
Oh, yeah.
and we would see them in the world. And the one that I watched was an actor that the Berkeley Rep called James Carpenter, and he was on jury duty one day, walking across the parking lot in Hayward to go into City Hall, where I was on jury duty too. I never got called. I don't know if he ever got called, but just watching him walk, a tall, slender man with legs like Lincoln, across the pavement was another example of what I regarded as theater
Mm.
in the middle of the street or in the parking lot. And and you are able to resource who you are really, but by the time you put it on what I'm calling your stage, you have produced a whole other person.
Well, thank you. Like I said, I don't want to tell stories about me, but of course, they're all me. So.